So Donald Trump's nephew, Fred Trump III, came out to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday on various TV networks. Fred Trump said that Donald Trump doesn't have the character or temperament to ever be in office again. I think the exact words that Fred Trump III said is that his uncle was, quote, atomic crazy. Well, now Donald Trump's atomic crazy son, Eric, is posting how disappointed he is in Fred Trump III because the Trumps gave Fred Trump III golf memberships and family vacations and money, and as a result, he's shocked that Fred Trump III is putting country over golf memberships and endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. Take a look at the statement that Eric Trump just made. He goes, "It's disappointing that after decades of unwavering love, support, golf memberships, family vacations, and millions of dollars in support for his wonderful son, Fred Trump has decided to cash in less than 100 days before an election. I have signed the checks and witnessed firsthand as my father and our family has provided endless financial support so that Fred's son could receive the best possible medical care. To read this garbage and see that he has now followed his troubled sister," he's referring to Mary Trump, who's great, "simply to earn a quick buck is disgusting, disheartening, and a prime example of no good deed goes unpunished. The golf memberships, Fred. How could you put the country and the well-being of others when Eric is personally signing checks? By the way, Eric, we know you personally signed checks. Or wait a minute, didn't you say at the New York Attorney General civil fraud case that you didn't sign checks and that you know nothing about how the business works? I wonder if this could also be used as an admission against you in future fraud cases against you. But I digress. So Fred Trump went on various networks and he said, "I'm endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris." Here, play this clip.
I believe in policy over politics.
Yeah.
And without question, Kamala Harris's policies are what I get behind. So I will be voting for Kamala Harris. And if I'm asked, I will campaign for her without hesitation.
Good.
Now, one of the reasons that Fred Trump is endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris is that when Trump was in office, Fred tried to get Donald Trump to actually help disabled persons, but instead, Donald Trump said to Fred, "Don't you think it'd be better off, Fred?" By the way, because Fred has a disabled son. "Wouldn't it be better off, Fred, if your son died?" Donald Trump said, "Why don't you just let your son die? And this way you could have a happy life in Florida. Why should we keep on supporting him? Just let him die, Fred." To which Fred was like, "You want my son to die?" And then when Fred was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump trying to spearhead some policies to actually help people with disabilities, persons with disabilities, Donald Trump repeated the same thing. And Trump said, "I don't really get this, Fred, these disabled people. Shouldn't they just die? Well, wouldn't they be better off dead?" Let me just show you Fred kind of share the story. Here, play this clip of Fred explaining the story. Play this clip.
Advocate for the disabled.
I was in the Oval Office 12 times and that was our mission, to advocate for people with complex disabilities. It culminated in May of 2020 in the Oval Office. Donald was there, and he was very gracious. Several other folks were there, including the group that we brought down. We dispersed. I was asked to go back and see Donald. He greeted me with his familiar, "Hey, pal, how's it going?" We sat down for a bit, and he just came out with, "These people, all the expenses, they should just die." He's talking about human beings who have complex issues. And the first thing he could say was, they should just die.
Fred claims this wasn't isolated, describing a phone call to alert his uncle the medical fund set up by the family for his son William was running low, a fund he says the former president consistently replenished.
A couple of years ago, I called him. I said, "Donald, the fund's running out." And without hesitation, he said, "Your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die. and moved to Florida.
Were you surprised?
It's a great question. My response was, no, Donald, he does recognize me, and said, well, thanks, and hung up. Was I surprised? I don't think you could hear something like that and not be surprised. But that is what he has become. It's sad.
There's a chapter.
Let me show you one more clip of Fred right here as well.
Trump way.
Complex and sometimes cruel. And within every family, people know this, families are complicated. Every family has their crazy uncle. My Uncle Donald is atomic crazy. And he has put his mark on the family history.
Atomic crazy?
Yes.
What's that mean?
Means he does things that, even as much as I know him, when he's out there now, I sort of shudder and say, is this the same guy I knew? What's making him change? What got him this way?
This is Donald Trump mocking disabled persons. He was mocking a disabled reporter here. And this was Donald Trump mocking this reporter at one of his speeches in connection with the 2016 election. Here, let me show you this clip. Play it.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said. This is 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction.
Here's the thing. The people closest to Donald Trump despise him, right? I mean, Donald Trump's former vice president is no longer his VP pick. Why? Because Trump tried to have him killed. Trump's former defense secretary doesn't support Donald Trump because he says Donald Trump's a threat to democracy. Donald Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, says Trump is a threat to democracy. Chris Christie, one of Donald Trump's closest friends for 22 years, says Trump is a threat to democracy. Because he's unhinged, he's deranged, he throws people under the bus. Fred Trump put country over golf memberships. And Donald Trump and Eric are now out there attacking their own family member for that. And let me just show you. Why don't I show you this one first? This is Donald Trump's former defense secretary. This is the Secretary of Defense, former Secretary Esper, okay, the top position. And he says Trump is a threat to democracy. Now, again, I don't care what political party you're from. When your own defense secretary says you're a threat to democracy, when your own nephew is saying that you are a horrible person who's racist and despicable and albiest and all these things. Here, this is Secretary Esper. Play the clip.
3 years after the attack on the Capitol, I'm just curious, Mr. Secretary, do you view Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy?
Well, first of all, good to be with you, Jim. It is a tragic day in our nation's history. And yes, I do regard him as a threat to democracy. Democracy as we know it, our institutions, our political culture, all those things that make America great and have defined us as, the oldest democracy on this planet.
Okay, then you may go, well, that's just one. Okay, how about Donald Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton? What did he have to say when I interviewed him? Here, play this clip.
If we go back to the 2020 debate, one of the jarring moments was Donald Trump saying, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by." That was, a lot of people remembered that moment. Now Donald Trump gives these rallies. The first event he held of the campaign season was in Waco, Texas. But he starts all of these events with the January 6th anthem. He's taken our national anthem. He's changed the words, and he now sings the song with the January 6th rioters who are in the D.C. jail, some of the most violent of the insurrectionists who he calls to free, and he calls them hostages. How odd, how weird, how dangerous is that rhetoric? And what do you make of that?
Well, I think it shows Trump believes that he can win simply by mobilizing what he sees as his base. And I think the conduct that he displayed on January the 6th, all day long, basically, alone disqualifies him to be president. None of these people were in the Capitol on any legitimate business. And my own view as a law and order conservative is they all ought to be in jail for a very long period of time. I think January the 6th wasn't the worst of it, though. I think later when he said the Constitution itself should be suspended so that he could be declared the winner of the 2020 election. I mean, you're really in fantasy land at this point. But he talked about suspending the Constitution like you would think the ruler of a banana republic would say it. That is disqualifying. And it's obviously disturbing that people don't more widely see it that way, that they say, well, it's just Trump being Trump. And that's the danger. When he says these things, he's actually saying things he believes in. And it sometimes takes him a while. He talks about it and talks about it and talks about it. But then you find that he then actually acts on these things.
All right, what about Donald Trump's former vice president, Pence? Play the clip.
Based upon the differences the president and I still have over my constitutional duties on January 6th, but also, as you said, based upon how I see the president shying away from our commitment as leader of the free world, being prepared to ignore the national debt, now even walking away from a commitment to the right to life at the national level. I've just made it clear that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump in this campaign, but I'll keep my vote on my own, and I'll vote according to my conscience in private, just like every American will.
Okay, what about Donald Trump's former close friend and ally, Chris Christie? Play the clip.
The one thing I know for sure now is I am not voting for Trump under any circumstances. If he's the only person on the ballot, I'm not voting for Trump because I know him too well. And he is wholly unfit to be president of the United States in every way you can think of.
Are we getting a trend here, folks? Are you seeing the trend with Donald Trump and how people view him? And it's precisely because, again, Trump's view and the Trump family view, oh, we give you golf memberships, you're supposed to be loyal to us. Donald Trump would always put himself above everything. He'll put himself above the country. He'll put himself above his family. He doesn't care. In Trump world, it's just him. But I showed you all of those clips so you can see the type of person that he is from others who know him very, very closely. So tell me what you think. And that's why I think we now have Lettuce versus J.D. Vance as well. Shady Vance, I think you're next. Oh, by the way, this is Shady Vance waving to nobody as he was getting on the airplane, leaving these disastrous speeches he gave in Nevada. Play this clip. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together, these people.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.